Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing now and make sure that you ring the bell to turn on video notifications. The Trump tariff saga continues, but now with a fresh twist. The United States president shared a post on Truth Social indicating that a so-called tariff dividend may be paid to every taxpayer in the United States in the amount of $2,000. In an interview to ABC's This Week, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent addressed one of Trump's boldest economic claims yet, this idea of a tariff dividend. Trump framed it as a benefit flowing directly from his aggressive tariff policies, which arguably has become a cornerstone of his second-term economic agenda. Bessent didn't confirm any official plan, but he didn't really dismiss it either. Instead, he offered a very broad interpretation, saying the $2,000 could come in, quote, in lots of forms, in lots of ways. Bessent is, of course, very good at smoke and mirrors, I would say. He's good at not providing meaningful answers to uncomfortable for him questions.
A new high.
Hasbro says they're going to have to increase their prices. Goldman Sachs says 86% of the tariff revenue collected so far has been paid by American businesses and consumers. So just bottom line, Mr. Secretary, do you acknowledge that these tariffs are a tax on American consumers?
No, I don't.
Even though you have companies saying they are going to have to increase prices, and given the fact that 86% of these tariffs so far have been paid by Americans.
You're quoting Goldman Sachs. So
yes, Goldman Sachs, correct.
I made
Which
a good,
I said, yeah.
I made a good career trading against Goldman Sachs.
Okay, all right. I do want to talk.
What's interesting in this case, however, is that Bessent pointed to various tax cuts already embedded in Trump's economic policies, such as the elimination of taxes on tips, overtime pay, and Social Security income, as well as new deductions for auto loans. According to Bessent, these measures represent the kind of relief that the administration envisions as part of its push to restore middle-class purchasing power. That was the idea of Bessent's response. So this discussion comes, of course, at a critical moment. The United States Supreme Court recently heard arguments in a high-profile case that could upend Trump's entire tariff regime. The challenge questions whether the president exceeded his authority under an emergency powers law to impose tariffs as high as 50% on imported goods. You may recall these are the measures that were introduced by Trump on what he called Liberation Day, April the 2nd. These tariffs affect almost every major trading partner and have become a defining feature of Trump's trade strategy. So if the court rules against the administration, the consequences could be truly massive, and likely there won't be any $2,000 tariff dividends to U.S. taxpayers. And if that is the route that the court takes, it could trigger refunds exceeding $100 billion to U.S. importers. It would dismantle the tariffs underpinning Trump's trade policy, and it would also remove one of his most powerful economic tools. Trump has already warned that a ruling against him would be, quote, a disaster for the U.S. economy. He claimed that it would undercut efforts to protect American industries and jobs from unfair foreign competition. During the Supreme Court hearing, Chief Justice John Roberts expressed skepticism, noting that tariffs in practice are, quote, an imposition of taxes on Americans, which of course it is. And in legal terms, he also said that it is a power traditionally reserved for Congress. Justices Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett also raised pointed questions, suggesting that even within the conservative majority, there may be growing unease about how far Trump has pushed executive authority. For the court, the case isn't just about trade, of course, it is about the balance of power between the presidency and Congress, and the upcoming midterms too, one may argue. However, Trump has defended his actions as both legal and necessary. He insists that the tariffs are key to rebalancing global trade and to reducing America's massive trade deficit with other nations. He's repeatedly cited increased tariff revenues as proof of success of his policies, claiming that the United States is now taking in trillions of dollars and will soon begin paying down the $38 trillion national debt. While economists argue that tariffs are ultimately paid by U.S. consumers, which is true, and businesses, not foreign governments, Trump maintains that the policy is making America stronger, richer, and more self-reliant. So, unsurprisingly, Bessent echoed that message on ABC, and he emphasized that while revenue collection is a positive side effect, the real goal is fairness and sovereignty in trade. He also suggested that over the coming years, tariffs could reshape the U.S. economy in ways that make it less dependent on imports and more attractive for domestic manufacturing and more resilient against global shocks. Now, that, of course, sounds really nice, but the truth is, Bessent doesn't know the long-term implications of U.S. tariffs because the United States has deindustrialized a long time ago, and increasing the fragmentation of global trade, which protectionist measures do, would most certainly backfire. Still, critics point out that consumers are feeling the pinch, and I mentioned this in multiple videos recently. Prices for imported goods for cars, trucks, and electronics have risen sharply, and small businesses that are reliant on foreign materials have struggled to absorb additional costs. If the Supreme Court strikes down Trump's tariffs, many of those companies would get relief, but Trump's economic strategy could be dealt a major blow. At the end of the day, the fate of the tariff system and the promised $2,000 tariff dividend check may hinge on the Supreme Court's decision. A ruling is expected within months, and it could either reaffirm Trump's power to shape global trade through executive action, or it can mark a major constitutional rebuke. For now, the administration continues to project confidence, of course, framing tariffs not as taxes, but as a patriotic tool of economic revival, which, of course, that is the typical approach to presenting protectionist measures to the public. As Bessent put it, the next few years could see trillions of dollars in new revenue and a fundamental shift in how America engages with the world. And whether that vision leads to a stronger middle class or higher costs for ordinary Americans, that's really the question that the courts and ultimately you, the voters, will have to answer. Stay tuned for new updates. Remember to subscribe, enable notifications by ringing the bell, and I will see you back here soon. Have a great rest of your day. Bye for now.